The latest version of React, 15.5, was released on April 7th. The main aim of this version is the transition to version 16.0. The things which will be removed in 16 are now labeled deprecated and display a corresponding warning message in the console. The biggest change is that React.PropTypes and React.CreateClass were extracted into their own packages. Both are still accessible via the main React object, but using either will log a one-time deprecation warning to the console when in development mode. But it turns out that PropTypes isn't quite working, that there have been some problems. Some on Twitter have even called it the PropType Gate. So version 15.5.1 released, and then 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4. This is reminiscent of old Windows jokes that you should not install it before the first service pack is available. By the way, the only 15.5.0 core release is mentioned on the official site and the GitHub repository releases tab. 4 other patch versions can be found on NPM. Download them there. In other interesting news, there was a question and answer session with Andrew Clark, who is on the React core team, on reactiflux chat. He said that they did this for a few reasons. It's not really about code size, since the validators are mostly stripped out in production anyway. 1, there's really nothing React-specific about prop types. They are generic runtime type validators. In fact, there were already many packages on NPM that mirrored the prop types from React, literally just a copy-paste from the React source. Splitting prop types out makes it easier for other projects to depend on them without taking a dependency on React. Another reason is that the React team wanted to communicate that prop types are only one possible way to do type checking in React. You can also use static typing via Flow or TypeScript. Finally, splitting prop types into a separate repo helps keep the React issue tracker focused on actual React issues. There are a couple of other questions from the chat session that I'd like to quote. Question: since the purpose of Fiber is essentially being able to achieve 60 FPS on the web, will React ever have some helpers built in for animation? Answer: React team feels we're not in the business of providing built-in solutions for animation or state management or other areas that can be solved in user land by our awesome community. Fiber will have some really cool scheduling capabilities that will enable animation library authors to do exciting things that aren't currently possible. I can't wait to see what you all build, said Andrew Clark. Question: what's the most difficult or challenging work left to officially ship version 16? Answer: React 16 is running for 100% of users on Facebook and Messenger, so it's basically done. The biggest remaining step, I believe, is to figure out our server-side rendering story. We don't really use SSR at Facebook, which is why this has come last. And then, of course, we need to get Fiber rolled on for React Native too. Hopefully we'll get 16 out sometime this summer. Also, it's important to note that React 16 is our first Fiber release, but it will be Fiber running in compatibility mode. That is, with synchronous scheduling that mimics how React of today works. The more exciting release will be React 17, which will enable async scheduling by default, and will help us realize the true promise of the new Fiber architecture. There's still lots of work to be done on this front. We just this week have had first rounds of meetings to discuss how to incrementally adopt async Fiber internally at Facebook. But React 16 will have improved error boundaries, and you'll be able to return arrays and strings from render, so still exciting. Answered from Andrew Clark. Take time and read the entire text of this question and answer session, where you can also learn about future versions of Recompose, Context, Rollup, about functional components versus classes, about styles and CSS in JavaScript, and other things. I'll include the link in the show notes. The React London 2017 conference was held at the end of March. The video has been available for a while, and I've watched one thing so far: the question and answer session with React developers. By the way, the format of the interview with unrehearsed questions from the audience is very interesting, and you can learn a lot. For example, someone once asked, "Hey Mark, how many push-ups can you do?" "More than you." Apparently, Mark won. Another interesting thing I want to point out is an article about a mobile web version of Twitter from the developers. As you may know, the mobile web version was recently relaunched under the hood with React and Redux, and the article shows some performance optimizations they did. In addition to the usual advice about code splitting and should component update, there were a couple of clever tricks. Move the heavy calculations from component will mount to component did mount. Don't use dangerously set inner HTML, which is very slow. Delay rendering big components. For example, switching between search and home tabs is pretty slow, so the user might think he simply missed the home button and clicked elsewhere. To give the user instant feedback, first we render the home button with blue highlighting, which shows that the app has acknowledged the button press, and then later we render all of the content of your feed. Also interesting fact, by removing the draft tweet state from updating the main Redux state on every key press and keeping things local in the React component state, they were able to reduce the overhead by over 50%. Have you tried a new online playground? Go to codesinbox.io. It's like isFiddle, isBin, or CodePen, but focused on React. Very useful for small React experiments and sharing examples. React and React DOM are immediately available, and it's easy to add Redux or any NPM package. And it supports modern JavaScript syntax, with a built-in prettifier and hot reload. The result can be downloaded in a zip file in the form of a Create React app project. It's great for demos, which I'd like to show colleagues or use for a question or answer on Stack Overflow. So that's the mix of news we have. I hope you've heard something interesting. Code with React and prosper.